The purpose of this video is to try and capture the attention of some of the major college football podcasters in hopes of enticing them to explore the idea of promotion and relegation in the major conferences of college football. It is my opinion that such a system would improve schedule balancing, increase the number of marquee games each season, create new interest and intrigue for fan bases, and maybe provide a path to solving other challenges such as brand-based revenue sharing and continued expansion. It is not hard to figure out that I'm not a professional podcaster, nor am I trying to be. I'm just trying to get an idea that I believe is worth broader consideration, even if that consideration ends with dismissal, in the hands and minds of analysts far better qualified to talk about the merits and pitfalls of such an idea. My hope is to inspire a couple of major podcasters to consider doing an episode on major conference promotion and relegation. The concept of promotion and relegation is not original. All I am doing here is applying it to major college football conferences. The same concept could be used for other sports like basketball, but that is a distraction to this conversation. In case anyone is not familiar with promotion and relegation, it simply means the best, most deserving teams are grouped together in the promoted league, while the lesser teams are demoted to a relegated league. The system is most famously used in British football leagues, where the member teams in a given league actually change from season to season. In this video, I will use the terms conference and league. The conference is the larger body that includes all of the teams. The leagues are how the teams are organized, with more than one league in the conference. For this video, those terms have to be kept independent. The first thing a system of promotion and relegation would do is align the best teams in a conference into a single, smaller league. I'm going to take a minute to do some commentary as it will support the idea behind the video. In my opinion, the ideal college football conference size is 9 teams. This allows for an 8-game schedule where every team plays everyone else and the games are evenly split 4 home games and 4 away games. The next best option is 10 teams, where you play 9 games and the extra home or road game is rotated each year. Conferences have used this format for many years without issue, so it is equally as good as the 9-team conference. Once you go beyond 10 teams, you lose the benefits of a full round-robin schedule. You potentially lose the natural tiebreaker of head-to-head results, and you introduce the possibility of imbalanced schedules. The only way to keep a full round-robin schedule with a larger league is to play more conference games, which would have the effect of isolating your conference from the rest of the college football landscape. This would make the conference pretty stale to its fan base and vulnerable from being cut off from the rest of the college football world. So going beyond 9 or 10 conference games is not a good option in the big picture. And now leagues are well beyond 10 teams, with the Big Ten and SEC each sitting at 18. That's far beyond what any round-robin schedule could accommodate. This has resulted in scheduling becoming a bit of a nightmare, with some teams getting favorable schedules and others being run through a gauntlet. Beyond the scheduling possibilities, conferences may also be able to use this to head off something that came out of the ACC this year. Now that the cat is out of the bag on brand-based revenue sharing, somebody's going to pursue this and make it happen. Maybe, just maybe, a system of promotion and relegation will allow conferences to bend this idea a little bit without completely caving to arrangements for individual schools. It is reasonable to expect the teams in the promoted league will draw better TV ratings. They are more likely to be relevant in national championship conversations. So giving them a better revenue sharing deal as a group is not an unreasonable idea, and it would certainly provide incentive to the relegated teams to improve. Side note, can we give the relegated teams the Thursday and Friday night games? I really prefer the best teams filling out a slate of Saturday games from noon to nighttime. Another possible benefit of this model is that it allows for additional future expansion. I'm presenting a simple model with 2 leagues, 12 teams in each leagues. You could just as easily do 3 leagues with 8 teams in this model. And if a conference were to ever expand to say 36 teams, you could have 3 levels of 12-team leagues. So the model is very flexible for future growth. One important note as we talk about promotion and relegation, teams in the relegated league are not omitted from the college football playoff. They are still members of the conference. They probably have a narrower path to the playoffs because of strength of schedule. But if you come out of the relegated league with a 12-0 or 11-1 record, more power to you. In this model, I use the Big Ten. For the purposes of transparency, I live in Ohio and I'm an Ohio State fan. To the best of my ability, that is not a factor in this model, other than when I simulated results, Ohio State actually beats Michigan, something that only seems to be possible in a simulation these days. I have expanded the Big Ten to 24 teams for this model. I selected the additional 6 teams based on hunches, rumors, and personal preference. The 24 teams are divided into two 12-team leagues. The leagues were based on each team's conference records for the past 2 years. For the new schools, I'm just using their records from their current conferences. The exact alignment isn't important. I use a 2-year cycle for the promotion and relegation. This would allow for home and away games to be played within your division and for each team to play every other school in the opposite division once. I'll talk about the scheduling and alignment in more detail in a minute. So I start with the 18 Big Ten schools. I add 6 more teams. Florida State seems desperate to do a DB Cooper out the back of the ACC airplane, so I added them. UNC is more discreet about it, but seems to have similar intentions. And I threw in Miami for good measure. The other 3 schools are all from the Midwest. I've always liked the idea of having Iowa State in the Big Ten and having the Cy-Hawk Trophy as part of the conference. It seems like a very healthy rivalry and a good fit for the conference. And I added Kansas and Kansas State to bolster the stronghold in the Midwest. The schools I added are just for demonstration purposes. If you're commenting about whether these were bad choices or not practical, you're missing the whole point of the video. So using those 24 schools, here are their combined conference records from the last 2 years. In hindsight, the conferences would probably start any new schools in the relegated league and make them work their way up. I didn't think of that until after I'd completed the model, but that would make a very appropriate way to admit schools on a bit of a probationary period and avoid penalizing existing schools and maintaining the purity of the promoted league. It would also limit the financial rewards for the incoming schools for a couple years. Going back to the records, I've simply listed them in winning percentage order. This is the basis of the first promotion and relegation cycle. I didn't get super creative on league names. I was so tempted to go with Woody Hayes for the promoted league and Rich Rodriguez for the relegated league, but it felt a little bit snarky. So we'll just stick with promoted and relegated. I won't read the school names to you. You can see them on the screen. I did align the leagues east and west. On the screen, the left column in each league is the West Division. The column on the right is the East Division. One thing to realize is that the alignment for the schools in the geographic middle could change with each cycle. You could use this flexibility and alignment to keep rivalries intact. I'll actually have an example of that later. The fact divisions would change on a regular basis might unnerve traditionalists, and while I agree it's not ideal, I can live with it for the sake of having a better overall model. It's sort of like having Cindy Crawford in her prime, but with a zit. So the scheduling format is pretty predictable for a 12-team league. Each school would play the other 5 teams in their division both years of the cycle, alternating home and away games. The first year they would play 3 schools from the other division. The 9th game would be a cross-league game and would specifically be used to preserve rivalries. Since Oregon was the best team in the Big Ten the last 2 years, I'll use them as the example. Oregon would play their Western Division opponents Iowa State, Iowa, Washington, Kansas State, and Illinois both years, swapping home and away games. Then in the first year of the cycle, Oregon would also play Penn State, Michigan, and Florida State from the Eastern Division. So we've accounted for 8 of Oregon's 9 games in year 1. In year 2, they would play Ohio State, Miami, and Indiana from the Eastern Division, again accounting for 8 games in year 2. The 9th game each year would be used primarily to preserve rivalries when rivalry teams are split across the leagues. The rivalries would probably have to be prioritized so that the most important ones are preserved first. And it would mean some would just get shelved for a few years if it can't be worked out. That's the price you have to pay for having jumbo leagues. Just consider it another zit. I am not an expert on Big Ten rivalries, but here was my stab at the games that would be preserved in this example. Iowa would play Nebraska. Michigan would play Michigan State. Kansas and Kansas State, I presume, is a rivalry. Illinois and Northwestern would play, and so would Indiana and Purdue. These games would be preserved for both years in the 2-year cycle. The other teams would be scheduled by some format. My preference would be by the longest period of time since the teams played. This way you'd pick off the schools that have never played first, and then rejoin matchups that have not been played in the longest time. It would be very random, and over time would be a fair way to preserve strength of schedule. For the teams not preserving rivalries, each school would have 2 such matchups each cycle. And you could easily make this your alternating 5th home game or 5th road game. So for example, the first year the promoted teams may get the 5th home game. Then the second year the relegated teams would get the 5th home game. So now we jump ahead to the end of the first 2-year cycle. In the background, I simulated games to get new 2-year conference records for each team. The simulation was weighted by the team's previous 2-year records, but with enough variability to generate some different outcomes. There are many ways you could manage promotion and relegation. You could simply say it is a set number of teams that get relegated from the promoted league and have their positions filled by the same number of teams being promoted. The specific rules are not the point of the video. For this model, I just rebaselined all the teams using the team's 2-year conference records. This allows for the most possible movement. So in my model, 5 schools moved up and 5 schools dropped down. USC not only moved up, but they dominated the regulated division with the second best record of the 24 teams. Kansas moved up, as did North Carolina, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Dropping down were Miami, Indiana, Florida State, Kansas State, and Illinois. Note that Iowa and Northwestern finished tied. In my opinion, the relegated team has to outperform a promoted team to take their spot. So Iowa stayed put. This leads to new divisions for the next cycle. Note that I moved Michigan State to the Western Division in the regulated league. This was to preserve the Indiana-Purdue rivalry for the next 2 cycles. Had I put Indiana or Purdue in the Western Division, they would have only played each other once in the 2-year cycle. Somebody from the Midwest had to go to the Western Division of the promoted league too. I sent Iowa west. Could have been Minnesota, but I kept Minnesota in the East to preserve their rivalry with Wisconsin. To close this video, the hope is the model will create better schedules from year to year. You're already hearing stories out of the SEC where some schools face a murderer's row, while others only have 1 or 2 tough games. This format would return to the small league format and have a lot more common opponents. It is a path to keeping the benefits of small conference play while allowing for greater conference expansion. You would have the added benefit of schools near the middle of the combined pack trying to achieve promotion or stave off regulation. That may not appeal on a national level, but for the local fan bases, it would be a big deal. My hope is that this is an interesting enough proposal to find a platform with some of the larger podcasters. While I hope this is a good idea, I would listen to the flaws with it as well. Analyzing college football or sports in general is not my day job. I'm just a fan with an idea. If you got to this point in the video, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time and welcome any comments. I was so focused on this being part of conference expansion, it wasn't until I was just about done with the video that I realized the Big Ten could do this today, and so could the SEC. Staying focused on the Big Ten and using the information through the end of the last two seasons, this is what two 9-team leagues would look like for the Big Ten next year. You can read the teams, so I'll just do a little commentary. Imagine if you knew the Big Ten powerhouses Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan were all going to play each other during the season. And the other games on their schedule include pesky opponents in difficult venues like Iowa and Washington, and a traditional power like USC, which is still a very attractive game. In the other league, the names are not as big and many of the programs are down from expectations. But imagine these teams fighting amongst themselves for position in the next promotion cycle, and the best of the teams fighting to go undefeated or limit the damage of one loss for a potential playoff spot. This model delivers very effective schedule balancing. Now I will stop. I really appreciate you watching this video. I welcome your comments. And I really hope to see this come to the surface with some of the larger podcasters who can do a more thorough analysis of the pros and cons of the idea of promotion and relegation.